Hare Krishna, good evening. Thank you for being here for today's Bhagavad-gītā class in Śrī Kṛṣṇa. And we are reading this evening Bhagavad-gītā as it is, chapter 2, text 1. It is called, the chapter is entitled as Atmanan Atma-vevaka Yoga, or distinguishing soul from body. Srila Prabhupada, however, gives it the title Contents of the Gita Summarized, because everything that you need to know in the entire Bhagavad-gītā is contained in the second chapter. So text 1. Sañjaya uvāca tam tathā kṛpayāviṣṭam aśru-pūrṇākulekṣaṇam viṣīdantam idam vākyam uvāca madhu-sūdanaḥ. Sañjaya uvāca. Sañjaya said, Tam, unto Arjuna, tathā, thus, kṛpayā, by compassion, āviṣṭam, overwhelmed, aśru-pūrṇa-ākula, full of tears, īkṣaṇam, eyes, viṣīdantam, lamenting, idam, these, vākyam, words, uvāca, said, madhusūdana, the killer of madhu. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Sañjaya said, seeing Arjuna full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusūdana, Krishna, spoke the following words. Purport. Material compassion, lamentation and tears are all signs of ignorance of the real self. Compassion for the eternal soul is self-realization. The word Madhusūdana is significant in this verse. Lord Krishna killed the demon Madhu, and now Arjuna wanted Krishna to kill the demon of misunderstanding that had overtaken him in the discharge of his duty. No one knows where compassion should be applied. Compassion for the dress of a drowning man is senseless. Man fallen in the ocean of nescience cannot be saved simply by rescuing his outward dress, the gross material body. One who does not know this and laments for the outward dress is called a śūdra, or one who laments unnecessarily. Arjuna was a kshatriya, and this conduct was not expected from him. Lord Krishna, however, can dissipate the lamentation of the ignorant man, and for this purpose the Bhagavad-gītā was sung by him. This chapter instructs us in self-realization by an analytical study of the material body and the spirit soul, as explained by the Supreme Authority, Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa. This realization is possible when one works without attachment to fruitive results and is situated in the fixed conception of the real self. Translation, please repeat. Sañjaya said, seeing Arjuna full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusūdana, Krishna, spoke the following words. Om Agnati Mirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam rupa kadamayam dadati svapadantikam. Vandeham Śrī Guru Śrī Yuta Padakamalam Śrī Gurun Vaishnavamscha Śrī Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Śrī Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Śrī Vishakhan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vrishabhanusure Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we learned in chapter 1, starting at about text 28 till the end, how Arjuna expressed his doubts about fighting in this war. He said, I don't want to kill the son of my kinsman, I don't want to kill my family. He said, and even if I fight this war, how can I enjoy my kingdom or victory or any happiness? You know, what pleasure will I derive possibly from that? Also, he said it's a sin to kill your family members, it's a sin. And ultimately it will lead to if all these men in the battle will be killed, it will lead to the destruction of the dynasty. These were his questions. Now in chapter 2, he poses his last question to Krishna. He says, how can I kill those whom I meant to worship? My gurus, my teachers, like that. They're worthy of my worship. How can I kill them? That's adama, it's irreligious. How can you engage me in an irreligious activity? And then of course we know in text 7, he ultimately admits his confusion about the whole matter to Krishna, and his relationship changes as that of a friend, and he accepts Krishna as his spiritual master and surrenders to him and says, I'm confused about my duty. Please, now you instruct me. So in text 1, and as I said, this chapter is called Atmanatma Viveka Yoga, or distinguishing the soul from the body. So we're learning in this particular sloka especially about compassion. Seeing Arjuna full of compassion. He's speaking out of compassion, but he's in confusion. So Srila Prabhupada is explaining his compassion is misplaced, is misdirected, and will not actually get a beneficial result. So Prabhupada even uses the word material compassion. The compassion as displayed by Arjuna is a material compassion. Why? Because it's in relationship to the body and bodily relationships. And it is because of ignorance. Arjuna is not seeing from the spiritual platform, so he's speaking from the point of ignorance. He doesn't know how to apply his compassion correctly. When we first hear this, it might appear somewhat a bit callous. These are strong words. You know, I mean, he's seeing his family members, his grandfather, his dearest grandfather, his teacher, his cousin brothers, and he has to kill them. That's a pretty heavy act to have to do, to perform, even for a kshatriya. They're soldiers, but they're leaving the killing till the last resort. You know, they try and attempt to resolve situations in so many other ways first. So it seems callous. You know, it's like when I first, Because we care for the body, we care for each other. We don't want to see other people in pain. We don't like to see people suffering. We don't like to see them crying, isn't it? So why is this material compassion? I remember before I joined Krishna consciousness, I was actually a follower of Mother Teresa. And I admired her greatly for her work that she did as a nun, as a Catholic nun in Calcutta. You know, she would pick up poor people off the street, especially the dying ones. I've actually visited those places that she established at that time. And I saw the house of the dead, you know, where she would pick up people off the street that were in a dying condition, and there were hundreds of stretchers on the floor, and volunteers and nuns were taking care of these people, you know, cleaning up their vomit, cleaning up their dysentery, and having to pacify crying and dying people. And I couldn't find it today, but I remember somewhere reading in the Bhagavad-gītā in the Purport where Srila Prabhupada says, what is the point of that kind of compassion if she picks up dying people off the street only to feed them meat, you know, or just to take care of the body? And it was very difficult for me to digest that information at the time, because I saw what she did and it was very heroic. I knew when I watched her work I would not be able to do that. I can't do it. I can't bring myself to touch a leopard person and take care of those wounds. Like, it would take a lot of courage, you know. But then of course I understood from Prabhupada's perspective, like from my perspective, Mother Teresa is a hero because I cannot do what she's doing. So it's admirable, her work is admirable. From Srila Prabhupada's perspective, because he sees from the transcendental platform, you know, sees everyone as spirit soul, as part and parcel of Krishna, he is seeing that the eternal issue, that yes, okay, you can help the body by helping this person having a better death, if there is such a thing. But if you're feeding meat or you're not giving them Krishna consciousness, then again you're creating bad, you know, destructive karma for these persons. He's also speaking like that about Vivekananda. He said, what's the point of having gone to America, just collecting money from wealthy people, coming back to India, saving the so-called poor, you know, by feeding them chicken and eggs and like that, you know, what's the point? So, and it was interesting a few years ago, some years back, when the Bhaktivedanta hospital was still new and more hospitals were being opened, there was actually even amongst devotees a controversy. Oh no, this is not the work of devotees, we shouldn't be focusing on opening hospitals, you know, that's just material, and like that. And I was astonished by this controversy actually, because I might need a hospital, you might need a hospital, the body gets sick, isn't it? We need a hospital. So then if I have to go to hospital, if I can go to Mira Road, Bhaktivedanta Hospital, where Srila Prabhupada is sitting there, they're playing Prabhupada's bhajans all day long, they're coming with a cart, you know, wheeling Lord Jagannath, then I'd rather be in that kind of a hospital. So it's a fine line, you know, to understand compassion correctly, and the importance of taking care, and ultimately taking care in a Krishna conscious way, and we'll come to that in a moment. It's like many devotees, even in Krishna consciousness, experience heavy trauma, you know, physical or mental traumas, because of inappropriately being, you know, neglected or preached to, whatever, like that, you know, being dealt with in a not a sensitive and proper way. And that can have, you know, negative repercussions, because compassion is an emotion and Krishna consciousness is an emotional experience. So we have to tread with people very carefully. And yes, of course, the body needs care, the mind needs care, and then the ultimate issue, the soul needs care. But if my body is very disturbed, if my mind is very disturbed, then how can I, you know, it's like when I went through a very traumatic experience, and you're suffering, you're really in distress. And then devotees tend to pull out that verse from Bhagavatam, tatenu kampam sushamishkamakso, like just accept it as Krishna's mercy. And it's sometimes like a dagger in your heart, actually. Like we have the Krishna conscious philosophy and we have compassion for suffering people, but we have to be careful how we apply that compassion. I'm only just learning myself now more that sometimes we've been trained in a particular style of Krishna consciousness, using certain wordings, using certain approaches, and I'm having to learn that to be careful not to be condescending, not to be judgmental, not to disturb the other person's heart even more than what it is already pained. So to learn compassion and to learn how to apply compassion appropriately is a very delicate matter. And I remember when I went through a difficult situation at that time, I just happened to meet up with Omila Mataji, and she was consoling me and she was sharing me her suffering. That's another thing we tend to do. When somebody's going through a very difficult period of time, the tendency is we override that person with our difficulties. Yes, but my difficulties were so much more worse actually. The art of listening and listening to the vibration of somebody's heart and their pain and suffering needs fine-tuning, and we have to be very sensitive and not use the philosophy like a weapon or just to smother things over and brush it under the carpet and like that. And she also shared that she went through a very difficult time, Omila, and she said her realization was, I needed to suffer so severely because I needed to learn compassion. Because unless you've had strong pain, how can you understand the pain of another? Even Srimati Radharani, there's a famous verse, I think in Ujjvala Nilamani, I can't remember the number right now, it says, nobody can understand the suffering of another. Because her heart suffered so much, such intense pain, we can't even comprehend how much she suffered when Krishna left her. So nobody can know the heart of another, the pain of another, the suffering of another. So this art of compassion is very sensitive, and we have to treat it very carefully. Prabhupada says, like this material compassion means, he explains that in text 7, he says if somebody is overly affectionate to family, what does that mean? He even calls it skin disease. He says if somebody thinks that by economic development, by making money, by making this arrangement, this adjustment, going here, going there, then I can solve my family's problem, and they only worry about their own family. So, but Prabhupada points out, you can't, that's all right, it has its place, but you can't save somebody like that from birth, death, disease, and old age. We know Prabhupada always points out that that is actually the real suffering. And the ignorance is that if I think to only take care of the body, then that in of itself is actually the cause of my perplexity. That is the cause of the perplexity. If I think I have to take care of the body, make so many adjustments, and then I'll be all right, and that's actually the cause of the suffering. Like that. So there's one story that just came to my mind I'd like to share. My Gurudev once told this story. He said Parvati and Lord Shiva were traveling and watching the world, watching people, and Parvati pointed out this one very poverty-stricken man, and she urged her husband, please Prabhu, take care, can't you? Doesn't your heart feel compassion? Don't you feel the pain, seeing the suffering of this man? Do something. Women, they're soft-hearted. Now go and do something. And Lord Shiva, he first didn't take it so serious. No, he's suffering what he needs to suffer. Come on, how can you be so hard-hearted? Do something. all right, give me some of your ornaments. And she gave, and they tied it into a little bundle, and they dropped this bundle with jewels just a few steps ahead where this man, this very poverty-suffering person, was walking. And this man is walking, oblivious, of course, what had just happened. And just at that moment, he's thinking, I wonder if I close my eyes, if I can still walk straight on the path. He's just in his mind thinking like that. So he's walking, he's closing his eyes, and he's walking right past that bundle of jewelry. You see? So whatever is your destiny, it will come. Prabhupada says if you're destined to eat 4 chapatis every day, it doesn't matter where in the world you will be, you will only get 4 chapatis. Of course, that in of itself, again, it's a delicate matter. We don't go around not caring and say, oh, well, it's just this person's karma. That's in itself very hard-hearted again. And we'll see in a moment why, because even Srimati Radharani, who is the embodiment of compassion, will never think like that. So this is the problem with material compassion, that usually it is only in relationship with the body, and if we make bodily adjustments, actually we will only complicate the situation. So I was at one time actually so absorbed in thinking about this compassion and this whole situation. I'm sorry, I don't have so much time this evening, but I wrote once a whole paper about compassion. So I'm taking a little bit help from this tonight. In Nectar of Devotion in chapter 22, Krishna's qualities are being explained. And Krishna is compassionate. So there it is explained. A person who is unable to bear another's distress is called compassionate. Krishna's compassion for distressed persons was exhibited when he released all of the kings imprisoned by Magadendra. While dying, grandfather Bhishma prayed to Krishna and described him as the sun which eradicated darkness. The kings imprisoned by Magadendra were put into dark cells, and when Krishna appeared there, the darkness immediately disappeared, just as if the sun had risen. In other words, although Magadendra was able to imprison so many kings, upon the appearance of Krishna, they were all released. Krishna released the kings out of his sincere compassion for them. So we can see a scenario here where apparently Krishna is just saving these kings, their bodies, out of a suffering situation and getting them out of imprisonment. But Krishna's compassion is such that he's not just saving the body. That's not the issue. He's coming like the sun, dissipating the darkness. Or like he says in the chapter 10, text 11 of Bhagavad-gītā, to show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So Krishna will take care of the body, he's saving these kings, but actually his real compassion is to give truth, is to save them from ignorance, to save them from darkness. And of course so many in the Nectar of Devotion, the example of King Bhishma is also given, how he prayed to Krishna and how Krishna directly appeared to him and offered his obeisances because of his compassionate nature. And Prabhupada says there, actually because Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is very difficult to approach him. But the devotees, taking advantage of his compassionate nature, which is represented by Radharani, always pray to Radharani for Krishna's compassion. Like that. So it's very difficult to see Krishna, but he has such compassion. Seeing Bhishma in that difficult situation, he chose to appear and show himself to him. Vishnujan Swami, in a lecture on Nectar of Devotion, he says, this is the compassionate nature of a devotee of the Lord, that he cannot stand to see the suffering of another living being. That is the definition of compassion. One who cannot bear the sufferings of another. So we should first of all appeal to the compassionate nature of the Lord, namely the spiritual master, who is headed by Srimati Radharani. The eternal consort of the Lord is considered to be the compassionate nature. In the compassionate nature of the Lord, he forgets his inapproachable position, his omnipotent position, and he accepts even a little thing offered in love to be a great deal. That is the compassionate nature of the Lord. Even a little thing offered in love is accepted as a great, great deal. So we ourselves should approach the compassionate nature of the Lord, and we should also give compassion to others in the same way. Prabhupada states, what are we? What is our value? It's nothing. And what is the value of our things that we are offering? It's also nothing. But because we are coming with a feeling of bhakti, I've brought this, please accept it. Therefore Krishna accepts it. So if Krishna has that compassion upon you, you should also extend that compassion to others. Like that. Prabhupada says in a purport in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 6, Text 1, whenever there is danger, the pure devotee thinks of the protection and shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is also advised in Bhagavad-gītā 9.33. Anityam asukam lokam imam prapya bhajasva mam. In this material world, there is danger at every step. Therefore, a devotee has no other course than to take shelter of the Lord at every step. So we're all suffering in this material world, and we are appealing to the compassion of the Lord, and the Lord extends his compassion to us, and we take the example to be compassionate to each other. Like that. Because Krishna becomes obliged to the loving spirit of the devotee and not exactly to the service rendered. No one can serve Krishna completely. He is so complete and self-sufficient that he has no need of any service from the devotee. It is the devotee's attitude of love and affection for Krishna that makes him obliged. We just on Sunday heard the beautiful story of Sudama Brahmana in the Krishna book reading, and how this skinny, poverty-stricken Brahmana came to Krishna in Dwarka in this fancy palace, and Krishna worshipped him with so much love and respect and affection, set him on his own bed. And then Sudama, have you brought something for me? He knew his friend from his school days, and he was ashamed to give the offering. He only had a little bit of cheap rice wrapped up in a cloth that his wife had quickly begged from the neighbor ladies. And he was too ashamed to offer that to Krishna. Krishna, have you brought something for me? Surely you haven't come empty-handed. But he was hiding it, you know. So my Gurudev, he also tells it, he actually had the bag under his armpit where smell and odor is coming out. But Krishna snatched it. He snatched it by force. You've brought me something really delicious. And he opened up the packet and took a morsel of this very cheap quality, odor coming cheap rice and tasted it. Krishna didn't think, this dirty Brahmana, this cheap rice. No, he accepted the love, and he showed that so beautifully in that story. Like that. So Radharani's compassion, karuna purna. She is full of compassion and mercy. Radharani, 25 qualities are listed in Nectar of Devotion and other shastras, but of course she has unlimited qualities. And one of her qualities is that of compassion. And Shivaram Swami, he writes in his book Sura Bhakti Chintamani, he relates this story. Srimati Radharani also feels such compassion. Vaishnavas describe how once some children near Radha Kund were tormenting a jackal. When Srimati Radharani heard the jackal's pitiful cries, she interceded on the jackal's behalf and not only gave it shelter, but a position as one of her associates. Such is the softness of her heart. So this is a well-known pastime that comes from the oral tradition of the residents of Radha Kund. It's a famous story that we like to hear, but we also know from the Nectar of Devotion that Radharani feels such compassion that once a sharp piece of straw was stuck in the mouth of a little calf and causing so much pain and bleeding, and she immediately went and took it out and put some turmeric powder and felt compassion to help this calf. So our highest lordships, Queen of Vrindavan and our Divine Master Shyamsundar Krishna, they're feeling such compassion. They're so soft-hearted. So, and we are fortunate to take shelter of that compassion and again learn from that example to be kind and compassionate to each other. In Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 497 in the Purport, Srila Prabhupada speaks more about Srimati Radharani's compassion. He says, he actually speaks about her emotion of separation and how this emotion of separation, that especially shown by Srimati Radha, is the highest level of devotional service. According to this conception, the devotee thinks of himself as very poor and neglected by the Lord. Thus he dresses the Lord as Dina Dayadra Natha. That's in a famous sloka from Madhavendra Puri also. Such an ecstatic feeling is the highest form of devotional service. Because Krishna had gone to Mathura, Srimati Radharani was very much affected, and she expressed herself thus: "My dear Lord, because of your separation, my mind has become overly agitated." She's suffering such pain, like a dagger, a knife in her heart. "Now tell me, what can I do? I'm very poor, and you are very merciful. So kindly have compassion upon me, and let me know when I shall see you again." Like that. The prayer of Srimati Radharani and the devotee's prayer. How a devotee prays and appeals to the compassion of the Lord is of course given by Prahlad Maharaj in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where he speaks so nicely. "My dear Lord, you're always transcendentally situated on the other side of the river of death, but because of the reactions of our own activities, we are suffering on this side. Indeed, we have fallen into this river and are repeatedly suffering the pains of birth and death and eating horrible things. Now kindly look upon us, not only upon me, but also upon all others who are suffering." We don't only just care for our own self, want to save our own skin. Actually, the symptom of a devotee is that he feels the suffering of all living entities. And he wants to help everyone. And at that moment, we don't see devotee, non-devotee, this one is better, this one is not so good. We just see the suffering. That's how Srila Prabhupada viewed it. He just see the suffering of the world and he wanted to help. And by your causeless mercy and compassion, deliver us and maintain us. O best of the great personalities, I'm not at all afraid of material existence, for wherever I stay, I'm fully absorbed in thoughts of your glories and activities. My concern is only for the fools and rascals who are making elaborate plans for material happiness and maintaining their families, societies and countries. I'm simply concerned with love for them. Very, very famous prayer by Prahlad Maharaj. And Vasudev Dutt in Chaitanya Lila, of course, embodied that same mood. And like that. So now we come to the mercy of the preachers. You see, because of this compassionate nature of the Lord towards us, so then the devotees, as preachers, wanting to share this compassion with one and all, Prabhupada says in the Purport, in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, Text 3, "Great unalloyed devotees of the Lord are compassionate towards the fallen, and therefore they travel all over the world with a mission of bringing souls back to Godhead, back to home. Such pure devotees of the Lord carry the message of Godhead in order to deliver the fallen souls, and therefore the common man who is bewildered by the influence of the external energy of the Lord should avail himself of their association." Again, On the 26 qualities of a devotee, Satsvarup Goswami, he says that devotees are compassionate. Devotees are workers on behalf of those who are suffering. The good qualities of the devotees are meant to serve others. And he also quotes Srimati Radharani, because she is the protectress of devotional service and of all devotees who want to approach the Lord. She's compassionate. Radharani, like all genuine devotees, wants to help others become devotees of Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he teaches about Trinada Pitsunicina, of course, how a devotee imbibes this mood of being more tolerant than a tree. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his commentary on Shikshastakam, he actually says the devotee of the Lord is kinder still, because he's compassionate to every living entity, whether friend or foe, desiring only their highest welfare. One who chants offenselessly is overwhelmed with thoughts of others' well-being. Thus, the second special quality, compassion without envy, is being described. And this is what I touched upon a little bit in the beginning. Yes, we have to be careful to be compassionate, but in an appropriate way, not out of envy, out of making myself feel better, and the other person maybe even worse, like that. O Lord, my friends and companions and all living entities are so unfortunate. How can they develop love and attraction for chanting your all auspicious names? They are sopped, this is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's words, they are sopped down in the quagmire of family attachment, wealth, property, successes, failure, loss and profit, joys and sorrows, birth and death, all because they are blinded by Maya. There's not the slightest indication that they are disgusted with futile material existence filled with anarthas or unwanted things. They're slowly strangling on the rope of unlimited desires for mundane sense gratification, all the while busying themselves in the vacuous pursuits of fruitive action that promise them divine pleasures and of empirical knowledge that tantalize them with the promise of liberation. How can these persons become attracted to self-realization? Praying to the Lord in this way, the devotee's heart is flooded with spiritual emotions, and he begins to sing loudly, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam, Kalo nastyeva, nastyeva, nastyeva gatyanyata. In the age of Kali, there's no other way, there's no other way, there's no other way than chanting the holy name, chanting the holy name, chanting the holy name of the Lord. So yes, we take care of the body and mind and all of these things, but in the direction of encouraging the soul, please, 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 I beg you, like Nityananda Ram would go before everyone's doorstep with a straw between his teeth, falling at the householder's feet. He never pointed out, oh, you're so entangled, you have to give up these gross materials. He never spoke like that. He just pleaded, rolling in the dust, please, please, chant the holy name of the Lord, like that. And how to do that, how it is possible to imbibe that mood, my revered spiritual master Srila Gaura Govinda Maharaj says, be humbler than a blade of grass in the street, be as tolerant as a tree, don't demand respect, rather offer respect to one and all, then you can do Hari Bhajan. Otherwise, if you don't possess these qualities, you cannot do Hari Bhajan. This cannot be practiced artificially. It is a natural thing. If you do it artificially, it will be hypocrisy. Krishna is in your heart. He knows what you're whispering in your heart, what thoughts are there in your mind. You cannot cheat him. How many days can you act artificially? Mahaprabhu teaches this, and Srila Kaviraj Goswami, one of the dearest devotees of Sriman Mahaprabhu, says, make a garland of this verse, put it around your neck and do Hari Bhajan. Otherwise you're not doing Hari Bhajan. Your bhajan will be kevala kaitava, only cheating. This material world is such a dreadful, dangerous, nasty place. Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Goswami Prabhupada has said, this is not at all a fit place for any gentleman to live. In such a dangerous situation, who will save us? The dear devotees of Sriman Mahaprabhu, the Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas, are our saviors. In the Black Lotus, a beautiful biography in honor of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, we find a description that Ganasham, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, before being a sannyasi, he was known as Ganasham. He was reading a report to Srila Prabhupada of his preaching in Eastern European countries. He was in Eastern Germany, and he said he was telling Prabhupada how there people were standing in long lines before food stores, and how little food was available in the markets, especially vegetables and fruits. Suddenly, Srila Prabhupada's face filled with tears. He interrupted and spoke about the resulting suffering of people due to atheistic governments. He was crying out of compassion for these people's material situations and out of appreciation of Ganasham's work. So Prabhupada's heart was bleeding, tears were flowing to think of this mindless suffering because of atheistic governments. People were suffering like that. And we know, of course, on his last journey, Srila Prabhupada, when he traveled actually from Vrindavan, he was in a dying condition. He was very, very ill, but he wanted to go one last time to London and then to Gita Nagari to establish Varnashram Dham. Till the last moment, he was only thinking such deep compassion of how to save humanity, but of course, especially his disciples. So he traveled in such a suffering condition to London. And the doctors had warned Prabhupada that he might die if he traveled. However, Srila Prabhupada reciprocated so lovingly with his disciples that despite his body giving way and only a thin layer of skin covered his bones, he decided to go to London and then America to inspire the devotees and to express his gratitude for their loving service. This is compassion, the deepest compassion. I've got this quote here from Amritavani, from Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj. There's one book available. It's a very nice book. So many questions are given, all different possible questions, and quotes from Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj's teachings are given as answers. Here the question is, isn't giving people food and clothing compassionate? And his answer is, if some persons believe in God or worship Hari, we will certainly help them with food and clothing. We have to feed the poor to make them worship Hari. We have to give them some tangible help. But to maintain a poisonous snake by feeding it milk and bananas is not compassionate. Mundane welfare work is like that. It leads people to godlessness by tempting them with sense objects. These are Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj's words. He speaks very clear, very strong, and we can't be sentimental, yet at the same time we can't artificially imitate his stance as well. But he's making it very clear. What's the point of giving material objects to people when it will only increase their material attachments and their further entanglement in the material world? Better to help in such a way that they will be able to come to Hari, to Krishna. There's another question, is everything that happens Krishna's mercy? And his answer is, everything that happens is an example of the Lord's compassion, for he's full of compassion. Sri Gaurasundar tests us. Sri Gaurasundar tests us by putting us into various difficulties and inconveniences. Our success at passing those tests depend on our good fortune. So this is another way for a devotee to see challenges, difficulties, sufferings, is that this is directly a test by Gaurasundar himself. And of course his test is in such a way, it's set up in such a way that we will be successful. He will help us. Just like any teacher wants his pupils to pass the test and be successful in his learnings, similarly the Lord will help us to pass these tests. What does the phrase compassion toward all living entities mean? Bhaktisiddhanta's Prabhupada's answer. By instructing that we should show compassion to all living entities, Sri Chaitanya Dev has induced us all to engage in the service of Lord Vishnu and the Vaishnavas. This is the special nature of Sri Chaitanya's Deva's mercy. This is true compassion. What is Sri Gauranga Deva's compassion? Sri Guru Sundar has said that Sankirtan is the only duty of humankind. This is proof of his magnanimous nature. Human beings can attain what is impossible even for the best of the demigods to attain. Sri Gauranga Dev does not cheat and does not mix material enjoyment with spiritual understanding. He has preached what is most beneficial to all living beings. What is beneficial to all living beings. If one hears his teaching, he will understand that all other teaching in this world are incomplete and weak. Sri Gaurasundar has not descended to cheat people, as the mental speculators cheat people by presenting their insignificant sadhanas. By preaching Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Gaurasundar has proved that the sadhanas put forth by so-called sampradayas are simply ineffective. He has also demonstrated that the congregational chanting of Krishna's name is the only way to attain auspiciousness. But the Sankirtan must be for Krishna. Any kirtan performed for one's own happiness or the happiness of others is not Krishna kirtan. These are Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaja's words. The holy name of Krishna is directly Krishna himself. The letters K-R-S-N-A are non-different from Krishna. By performing Krishna Kirtan, the sinful mentality of impersonalists and atheists is destroyed, and they become eligible for ultimate liberation. Mayavadi Prakashananda is the prime example of this fact. Even people who are too attached to material enjoyment can attain ultimate liberation by performing Krishna Kirtan. Prataparupa, the king of Utkal, is the prime example of this fact. All jivas, including men, women, animals, birds, trees, and even the dead stones, can be liberated by the performance of Krishna Kirtan. The animals, birds, trees, and creepers of Jarikanda forest are prime examples of this fact. The living entities are not becoming liberated simply because they do not engage in Krishna Kirtan. Sri Gaurasundar incarnated in this world to benefit all living entities. Our only welfare lies in performing Krishna Kirtan. There is no other way to attain the ultimate goal of education, knowledge, and life itself. Actual Krishna Kirtan is that Kirtan by which Krishna is pleased. I've already read that. Sorry, I just realized I've doubled up. All right. So I think we can understand something a little bit in my own feeble way. I've tried to convey what Srila Prabhupada is saying in the Purport, that we have to understand the fallacy of material compassion. We have to understand why and how to apply correct compassion to the body and the mind, for what purpose, and what is the ultimate, the highest compassion as embodied by Srimati Radharani and Krishna himself, and ultimately given to us by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, especially for this age of Kali. What is surrender? This suffering, the purpose of all this suffering is because Krishna is pushing Arjuna, his dearest friend, to surrender. That is the purpose of suffering in this world. You can repeatedly endure the lashes of Maya and continue to try and enjoy, or you can finally wake up to yourself and realize, actually, this is the mercy of the Lord. Why? Because the Lord has the right to give punishment. But His punishment is not like the all-wrathful God out of vengeance just because He wants us to suffer. No, He's giving a certain amount of suffering, just as much as what we can endure, just to push us to the ultimate limit, to come to this point that Arjuna was forced to come to. All right, I give up, I surrender. Please, you instruct me. Krishna's will is supreme in all matters. Even if I think I will do something, I will not have the power to do that thing if the Lord does not sanction it. To dovetail our will with the Lord's will is called sharanagati, or surrender. And surrender means peaceful life. So thank you very much for your attention. The hour is over. We could speak many more. Actually, the topic is so important and so broad and deep that it really needs, many days of seminar maybe, and discussion. So thank you for your patience. Are there any comments or questions?
What is the last sentence, surrender means?
Surrender means Krishna's will is supreme in all matters. Even if I think I will do something, I will not have the power to do that thing if the Lord does not sanction it. To dovetail our will with the Lord's will is called sharanagati, or surrender. Surrender means peaceful life. All material objects, this is the important thing, this is the vision of the devotee. All material objects are favorable for Krishna's pastimes. But if instead of offering material objects to Him, we use them to seek our own happiness in this world, we will forget Him. Hence, the merciful Lord has created this material world to test us. If we live here seeking material happiness, we will certainly forget Krishna. That the material world is meant for our testing is the proof of the Lord's compassion. So, my level of realization is definitely not this depth, but we take help of Guru and Gauranga and the Acharyas and Srila Prabhupada's teachings, and he speaks many things, and sometimes only in short version, and then our Acharyas elaborate and we can take their help and learn more. So I was really happy that this topic of compassion came to me this evening, because I've pondered and pondered and pondered about this topic of compassion for many years and what it really means. Because, is Krishna hard-hearted? That He doesn't feel sorry for Arjuna's tears? Is Prabhupada hard-hearted, calling Mother Teresa and such just material welfare? Like that, So it's been a very wonderful topic to discuss this evening. Are there any questions? Anything? Yes, Prabhu?
This first line of this purport actually,
yeah,
this material concept, compassion, lamentation and tears are all signs of ignorance of the real self.
Yes.
So sometimes when we feel that the Lord is so compassionate and merciful to us that we are here actually, and we feel tears in our eyes actually.
Of course.
That is not of the material compassion.
Yes, of course. The Lord has such compassion for everyone. Actually, He wants everyone to be happy, and He wants everyone just to come back to Him. And to feel that compassion on ourselves, that can make me cry as well, isn't it? Because Krishna's heart is so soft and so tender. And He actually, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 22, I was hoping Hari Bhakti would be here because she pointed it out. We had this discussion previously in text 37 to 39. I love these verses. So if you don't mind, I'll just share them. There Krishna says, if those who desire material enjoyment or merging into the existence of the absolute truth engage in the Lord's transcendental loving service, they will immediately attain shelter at Krishna's lotus feet, although they did not ask for it. Krishna is therefore very merciful. Krishna says, if one engages in my transcendental loving service, but at the same time wants the opulence of material enjoyment, he's very, very foolish. He's just like a person who gives up ambrosia to drink poison. Since I'm very intelligent, why should give I this fool material prosperity? Instead, I shall induce him to take the nectar of the shelter of my lotus feet and make him forget illusory material enjoyment. When someone engages in Lord Krishna's devotional service for the satisfaction of the senses, and instead inquires a taste for serving Krishna, he gives up his material desires and willingly offers himself as an eternal servant of Krishna. So this is real compassion, is to first of all taste the nectar of this devotional service yourself, and then induce others. Please don't take poison, taste this ambrosia. And we're simply tiny messengers on the behalf of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and trying to engage in his service. Jai, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Hari Bol.